Before I share a little bit, aren't you impressed with the quality of the kids that get to read scripture in this church? I mean, our mom was really better than a lot of them. I want to tell you a little story about my granddaddy, John W. Morton Jr., and he passed away 2 weeks ago. He was 38 days short of 100 years old. So he had a long, full life, and I just want to tell you a couple lessons I learned from him and share something with you. I was really blessed to be his grandson, and I learned a lot of lessons from watching him. He wasn't the kind of guy that taught a lot by talking, but the way he lived his life said a lot. And one of the biggest lessons he shared through his actions is to be willing to try something new. He was naturally curious and always willing to take on a new challenge, even if he didn't know how to do it when he got started. Before my time, he accomplished some pretty amazing things. Back in the 30s and 40s in Knoxville, he would hand-build boats and race them on the new Norris Lake. He made his own bow and arrow. He, early in the age of photography, he took up photography. He had his own darkroom in his house and developed his own film. I remember spending time down there with him when I was growing up. And when he was about 70, he became the first guy in our family to solve the Rubik's Cube. And then he taught several of us grandchildren how to finish it. We had a little crown that we made that we all shared. When he retired from Southern Railroad when he was 62 years old, he decided to try something new again, and he took up woodworking. And this is one example of something he carved. This is something that we sit with pride on our mantle at home. There's many others, and the picture that I shared here, you can see a number of the things he carved. You might also be able to see that a lot of them have blue ribbons. This picture's from the TDA Fair, which is the fair in Knoxville. And he won a lot of awards doing that and enjoyed a lot of time. When we did Receiving Friends, about a week and a half ago at the funeral home, one of the most comforting touches was his pictures were there and his wood carvings were there, laying on all the tables around there. And so the discussions at the funeral home really were a celebration of life. It was pretty cool. I'll share one other example. My grandmother passed away when he was 86, and they lived alone. I mean, the two of them lived together in a condo at the time, and we wondered, how's this going to work out? Because he had never cooked, he had never cleaned, he had never washed clothes, and we weren't sure how he would adapt. Well, he showed us about a week and a half later. My mom called and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm making pot roast." And she said, "Well, why are you doing that?" And he said, "Well, that's what I wanted to eat." He had found my grandmother's recipe book, and he picked right up, and for another decade, he lived by himself, taking care of himself. So he was a very independent fellow. He didn't wait to know how to do something before he started doing it. If I started wood carving like this, I'd probably make a box or a ball. Any of you familiar with the sculpture of Venus de Milo, kind of a classical Roman sculpture? That was the first thing he ever did. He took pictures of it and carved it out, and then he picked up, and you can see this design is very intricate. He's got a number of chains that are about 5 feet long, all carved out on one piece of wood. So a lot of very intricate stuff that I still love and admire. This year in stewardship, our theme is taking the next step. Often a barrier to us getting started and taking the next step in new areas of service and ministry is we don't feel totally prepared. We find ourselves on the threshold of that comfort zone, and we are reluctant to take a step out. But we need to remember, when we do something new in ministry, God will bless both the people we serve and He will bless us. Remember the story of the boy who shared his loaves and fishes with Jesus. He didn't have lunch for everybody, did he? But Jesus was able to take that he had shared and multiply it to bless others. Think about the disciples. When they signed up for ministry with Jesus, none of them was really prepared for that, were they? But he was able to take their service and bless other people. I know myself, I have found over time, as I go into new ministry opportunities, I feel unprepared. And even though I haven't been as ready, God has never failed to grow me through those. I remember the first time I served in a nursery. I was back in college. While I could keep the kids safe, I was not prepared. I remember when Kelly and I first came to this church, we had the middle school group. And we were probably about 6 years older than the middle school. So we were prepared enough. I remember the first time that I got a chance to lead the search committee for a minister of youth, and that was a very humbling experience, but I grew through that. I remember starting to teach RAs. I wasn't quite ready for that, but it was good, and I certainly had no experience as a basketball coach when I started coaching up. But through all those things, God was able to grow me and hopefully to use some piece of that ministry. So as we think toward next year, consider what new and different area services God might have for you. Maybe you've already got one in mind that you can kind of rolling around, and this can just be an encouragement to take that step. If not, in your bulletin today, there's a list of ministries. There's so many great things that this church does. And you might just take a look over those and think, which of those might I have an interest in and might I feel some calling toward, but so far I haven't felt comfortable making that decision. Maybe this could be a chance to take the next step. Let's take the next step in ministry together, and in doing so, let's be open to new and different roles. You might just find that God uses that role and uses you to carve something remarkable.